He called me Mom for 3 years until the night he moved into her old room. I didn't ask for a house full of ghosts, but after my daughter Sarah left for college, the walls started whispering. The silence wasn't peace, it was judgment. Every photo frame, every shampoo bottle she left behind watched me as if waiting for a decision I didn't want to make. Then came Adam. He had nowhere else to go. Sarah's college friend turned temporary guest while he sorted out housing issues. A polite young man with sad eyes and a voice that always sounded like he was apologizing. He'd been through a rough patch with his mother, or maybe she had with him. I didn't ask too much. I just saw he needed help and I had space. He moved into Sarah's room that September. I stripped the pink duvet and replaced it with navy. Took down the old ballet trophies, stored the stuffed animals in the attic. It was supposed to be temporary, but he stayed. Adam cooked sometimes, washed dishes without being asked. He always made 2 cups of tea, even if I didn't ask for one. He'd knock lightly at my door to say goodnight, then hover as if he wanted to say more. Sometimes he just looked at me, held his gaze a second too long. He never called me Mrs. Hill or ma'am, just Mom, still, as if the name had grown roots. Maybe I should have corrected him, but I liked hearing it, especially after my own daughter had stopped calling entirely. The first time I caught myself checking my reflection before walking downstairs, I felt a flush of shame. He was 24, I was 50, old enough to know better. But age doesn't stop loneliness, and he saw me. Really saw me. There was one moment I remember too clearly. I was folding towels at the kitchen counter. The window was open, wind lifting my nightgown slightly, just enough to make me self-conscious. He walked in quietly behind me, and I felt his presence not like a boy walking into a room, but like a man carrying something unspoken. "You don't have to do that," he said, meaning the laundry. But his eyes said something else. I smiled. "It's fine, I like the quiet." He leaned against the fridge, arms crossed. "The quiet's loud here." I didn't answer. My hands kept folding. My heart didn't. That night I opened the door to her old room to bring in the clean towels. He was lying there on the bed reading. He looked up and said, "You look tired, Mom." And I don't know why it made me want to cry. Because Sarah never asked. Because my ex-husband hadn't looked at me that way in years. Because no one had said Mom with that much warmth in a long, long time. And because I didn't want him to stop. I walked over and set the towels down. He reached for my wrist, not urgently, not forcefully, just a gentle brush of fingers. "You okay?" he asked. I nodded. He didn't let go. His hand stayed on mine. We just stood there. His eyes moved to my mouth, and I didn't move. That was the moment. Nothing happened, not that night, not in that room, but something shifted. The ground cracked beneath what I thought was solid. I left before the silence could speak for us. But even as I closed the door, I already knew he wasn't just Sarah's old friend anymore, and I wasn't just Mom. When Sarah left for college, she didn't hug me at the train station. She was late, irritable, tapping away at her phone. Her goodbye was rushed, almost mechanical. "I'll text when I get there." But she didn't. Not that night. Not the next. I chalked it up to independence, freedom, that hunger to shed your old skin even if it still fits someone else's love. But the silence she left behind it settled in the house like fog. The kind that makes you second-guess the shapes of familiar things. That's why I let Adam stay. He was supposed to crash on the couch for a weekend. But then his sublease fell through. Then his paycheck didn't clear. Then he caught the flu, and I couldn't bear the thought of him coughing in some freezing shared basement. "Just stay in Sarah's room until you figure it out," I'd said. He looked at me, eyes wide, like I'd handed him more than a room. "Are you sure?" I nodded. "It's just a room." But it wasn't. Not really. It was the last place that held the scent of my daughter. Her last toothpaste. Her favorite hoodie still thrown behind the closet door. I'd preserved it like a shrine until Adam stepped into it and made it his own. The strange thing, I wasn't angry. I didn't feel like he was replacing her. If anything, he made the space feel alive again. Adam was respectful, always picked up after himself, always waited for me to speak first. He filled in the silences with small kindnesses, folded laundry, swept leaves off the porch, offered to pick up groceries, even when I said no. But there were subtler shifts too. The way he lingered in the doorway while I cooked, the way his eyes followed me when I walked upstairs in a robe, the way he touched my shoulder when he passed behind me in the kitchen too lightly to be just polite. And I noticed him too. He had this quiet intensity. He didn't flirt, not openly, but his presence was heavy like a pressure behind glass. I could feel it even when he wasn't in the room. One evening I was pulling weeds in the front yard when my neighbor Cheryl called over the hedge. "Who's the young man?" she asked, lips curled in curiosity. "Friend of Sarah's, just staying for a bit." Her eyes narrowed. "He mowed your lawn the other day, shirtless." I laughed it off. He was helping out. She didn't press. But that night I caught myself watching him through the window while he moved through the kitchen, barefoot quiet, humming some song I didn't recognize. I poured a glass of wine I didn't plan to drink, sat at the kitchen table longer than I needed to, waited for something to shift. "Long day?" he asked, placing a plate of cut fruit between us like we'd been sharing meals this way for years. I nodded. "Garden's getting overrun." He leaned his elbows on the table. "You should let me build you a trellis, something permanent." "Why?" He looked up at me with those soft eyes. "Because things grow better when they're supported." The words stuck in my throat longer than they should have. We talked for hours, about nothing, about everything. He told me about his estranged mother, about his failed relationships, about how he didn't really feel like he belonged anywhere. I didn't tell him that I sometimes stood in Sarah's old bathroom just to breathe in her shampoo, that I still checked my phone for a text she never sent, that I sometimes cried while cooking grief seasoned into the sauce. He didn't need me to confess. He saw me anyway. That night I paused outside Sarah's room, his room now. The door was slightly ajar. I could see the flicker of the TV screen lighting up his face. He was lying on the bed, head tilted back, one hand resting near his stomach. He looked up, met my eyes. "Couldn't sleep?" he asked. I shook my head. "Me neither," he said, too quiet. He didn't invite me in. I didn't step forward. But the moment stretched between us like a thread pulled taut. It should have broken. Instead, it deepened. I turned and went to my own room, closed the door, locked it. But I couldn't sleep either, because the house didn't feel empty anymore. It felt dangerous. And I didn't know if I wanted it to stop. That night, the one where everything shifted, wasn't marked by anything grand. No candles, no storm, no music humming low in the background. Just a chill in the air, a quiet house, and the ache of wanting something I couldn't name yet. I had just stepped out of the shower. My robe clung damp to my skin. I didn't hear Adam's footsteps on the stairs. The hallway light was off, and I assumed he was asleep. But when I opened the linen closet, our hands met. He had reached for the same towel. We both froze. His hand brushed the side of mine, warm and steady. I let out a small laugh, awkward and breathless. "You scared me," I whispered. He smiled, eyes scanning my face. "Sorry, didn't mean to." I meant to step back. I meant to say goodnight and close my door. But I didn't. Instead, I stood there, just stood there, wrapped in steam and something unspoken. He looked at me, really looked at me, like a man looks at a woman he isn't supposed to want. "Carol," he said. And it startled me. He had never called me that before. Not once. Just Mom. And yet here it was soft and deliberate, like it was sacred. "Carol," he said again, quieter this time. "I think about you more than I should." I swallowed. My throat was suddenly tight. "That's not funny," I whispered. "I'm not joking," he replied. His hand hadn't moved, neither had mine. It would have been so easy to turn away. But instead, I said the thing I shouldn't have said. "I think about you too." He stepped closer, no rush, just slow, reverent movement. "I know this is wrong," he said, "but it doesn't feel wrong when I'm with you." He was close enough now that I could feel his breath. The space between us had dissolved. I should have pushed him away, reminded him I was his friend's mother, that I was twice his age, that Sarah, my daughter, had trusted him. Instead, I whispered, "Then don't say anything more. Just be quiet." And then I leaned in. I didn't mean to, or maybe I had been meaning to all along. His lips met mine in the dark hallway, soft and searching, like a question neither of us knew how to ask. It wasn't frantic. It wasn't desperate. It was sad, because both of us knew this kiss wasn't allowed, because we knew what we were breaking. But we kissed anyway. My hand moved up his chest. His fingers brushed the side of my face, tender and careful, like I was something fragile. I didn't pull away, even when I should have, especially when I should have. When I did finally step back, I couldn't meet his eyes. "I'm sorry," I said, my voice barely audible. He shook his head. "Don't be." I turned quickly and walked to my room, heart-pounding shame creeping in through the cracks. But the truth, the worst part, I didn't feel regret. I felt alive. For the first time in years, the next morning I couldn't look at myself in the mirror. I dabbed on foundation, mascara, war paint, for the battle I'd chosen to lose. My hands trembled as I buttoned my blouse. I was 50, not foolish. But that hallway kiss had stripped away years and reason all at once. I avoided Adam. He didn't avoid me. He stood in the kitchen when I walked in, already making coffee. He handed me a mug before I could ask. No words, just that same steady gaze. He didn't say sorry, and I hated that I didn't want him to. Instead, I wanted him to say my name again, the way he had the night before, like it had weight, like it meant something. I sat at the table, clutching the mug like it might burn the guilt out of me. "This isn't who I am," I said quietly. He leaned against the counter. "Then who are you?" I didn't have an answer. Because mother felt like a title worn thin. Because wife had become a memory I no longer missed. And woman, I hadn't felt like one in a long time. Not truly. "You were lonely," I murmured, mostly to convince myself. I was weak. Adam shook his head. "No, we saw each other, that's all." I snapped, then needed to feel angry righteous. Anything other than desire. "Don't romanticize it, Adam. You kissed your friend's mother in a hallway full of her daughter's memories." His jaw clenched, but he didn't look away. "You kissed me back." Silence. He was right. I had wanted to. That's what terrified me most. I went to my room and sat on the edge of my bed, the one I'd slept in alone for 5 years. I remembered how it had felt to be touched again, not sexually, not even deeply, just seen. Warmth, meeting, warmth in the quiet. And I hated how much I missed it already. That night I dreamed of my ex-husband for the first time in years. In the dream, he stood at the top of the stairs watching me kiss someone I couldn't see. When I woke, my chest ached from holding my breath in the dark. I started avoiding Adam. I left early for errands I didn't need to run. I ate in my room. I kept the hallway light on at night, bright and exposing. No more shadows to fall into. But he didn't leave. And he didn't push. He just waited. Until the night the power went out. It was raining. I was halfway through folding towels when the lights blinked and vanished. I froze. The house moaned with wind, and for a moment I was alone again, truly terrifyingly alone. Then his footsteps. "Carol," he called softly. "I'm fine," I lied. He found me in the hallway, candle in hand. He looked different in the flickering light, softer, older. Or maybe it was me who saw differently now. "I was going to go out for a bit," he said, "but with the storm..." I nodded, unable to speak. The silence curled around us again. "I can leave," he offered. I shook my head too quickly. "No, just stay out of Sarah's room tonight, please." His eyes darkened. "Because if I'm in there, you'll come looking." His words struck something raw. I stepped forward close enough to feel the warmth of his chest, but didn't touch him. "Because I don't know how to be the person I used to be anymore." "You're not," he said gently, "and that's okay." I felt it again, that pull, the ache I'd mistaken for shame. But it wasn't shame. It was the realization that I had built my life around what was expected, not what was true. I thought the worst sin, I whispered, was wanting to be touched. Adam reached forward, brushing a damp strand of hair from my cheek. "The worst sin is pretending you don't." And for 1 second, one shameful, impossible second, I almost let him kiss me again. But I turned away. Not because I didn't want him to, but because I knew this wasn't the end. It was only the beginning. 3 weeks passed. 3 long, aching, twisted weeks. Adam stayed in the house like nothing had happened. He was calm, respectful, attentive. He didn't touch me again. Didn't say anything inappropriate. He played his part while I quietly unraveled behind closed doors. I told myself it had been a one-time mistake. A moment of loneliness wearing the face of desire. But at night, when I lay in bed listening for his footsteps, I knew better. I hadn't just imagined the connection. And I hadn't stopped wanting it. Then came the knock on the door. It was Sarah. My daughter, smiling wide, her hair shorter than before, her voice cheerier than I remembered. She hadn't warned me she was coming. Just stood there in the entryway, suitcase in one hand and a bouquet of grocery store daisies in the other. Surprised, she beamed. "I missed you." I was too stunned to answer. She hugged me tight. I didn't move right away, just stared over her shoulder into the living room where Adam's coat still hung by the door. "Oh," she added, pulling back, "and I brought someone." My stomach dropped. She stepped aside, her smile growing wider. And then he appeared. Adam, carrying her second bag. His arm draped around her waist like it belonged there. "This is Adam," she said, radiant, "my fiancé." I forgot how to breathe. I didn't hear what she said next. Not really. Something about reconnecting after he left the house. A few texts. A spontaneous road trip. "We just clicked," she said. "You always said timing was everything, right?" I couldn't speak. Couldn't even fake a smile. Adam didn't say anything either. He just looked at me with that same quiet intensity, the one that used to be just ours. But now it was something else. Something obscene. "I hope it's okay," Sarah added. "We thought we'd stay a few days before we head back to the city." I nodded. What else could I do? Of course. Of course they'd stay. Of course he was hers now. That night I watched them from the hallway like a ghost in my own home. She curled into him on the couch, like it was the most natural thing in the world. He stroked her hair, kissed the top of her head. And I felt something inside me, something primal, start to rot. I went to the kitchen, poured wine, forgot the glass, and drank straight from the bottle. He found me there an hour later, alone, in the dark. He didn't say anything at first, just stood in the doorway. Then you're shaking. I turned, eyes wet. What are you doing? What do you think? She's your fiancé. He walked closer. She's your daughter. I laughed bitterly. You think I need reminding? I didn't plan this, he said, any of this. Don't I warned? Don't you dare play innocent. He looked genuinely pained. I didn't come back for her. I came back for you. Silence. Heavy, sharp. You kissed me, I said. You kissed me back, he replied. She trusts you. He nodded, and I love her too, in a different way. You don't get to say that I snapped. You don't get to love us both. And then he said it quiet, raw, sincere. But I do. I slapped him. I didn't even think, just felt the sting in my palm and the burn in my throat. He didn't move, didn't flinch. He just stared at me and said, we started something, and it's not done yet. I shoved past him and locked myself in the bathroom. I cried there until the candles burned out and the mirror fogged over. I looked at my reflection and didn't see a mother, didn't see a woman. I saw something else, something I couldn't name. I didn't sleep that night, not even a second. I lay there in the dark, listening to the faint sounds of them through the walls, her laugh, his voice, the clink of wine glasses. My daughter beaming in a love she believed was real, and him comfortably slipping into the version of himself she thought she knew. But I had tasted the other version, the one who looked at me in candlelight, the one who whispered my name when no one else was around, the one who didn't say sorry. I kept hearing his voice again, looping in my head like a cruel lullaby. We started something, and it's not done yet. He said it like it was truth, like it didn't matter who it hurt. By morning, I looked like a woman unraveling. My lipstick went on too bright. My hands couldn't stop shaking when I buttered the toast. Sarah didn't notice. She was glowing drunk on some fantasy of a future she didn't know had already been tainted. Adam noticed. He watched me in silence, eyes darker than usual, his hands tucked in the pockets of the jeans I'd once folded in my laundry room, while still wet from the rain. We're going to walk to town, Sarah chirped. I want to show him the bookstore where you used to read to me. I nodded. Sure. Come with us, she offered. I couldn't speak. Adam answered for me. Let your mom rest. She looks like she didn't sleep. I turned my eyes on him, sharp enough to draw blood. He smiled. Innocent, controlled, a master of masks. As they left, I leaned against the kitchen counter, gripping the edge like it was the only thing holding me upright. The second the door shut, I gasped out the breath I'd been holding since last night. The silence was crueler now. It wasn't emptiness, it was betrayal echoing back at me. By noon, I found myself in Sarah's room, my old daughter's room, now his. I hadn't entered since he moved out, and she claimed it as theirs. The scent was different. Her perfume lingered faintly mixed with the scent of his cologne. But the bed, it was the same bed he once laid on while calling me Mom. Where I had once stood too close and he had reached for my wrist. I opened the closet, found his suitcase, her jacket, and then tucked inside a leather-bound notebook I didn't recognize something he never meant for me to see. A page, torn at the corner, with a date, and my name. Carol. The things I feel for you don't have words. If they did, I'd scream them from the hallway. Instead, I keep them in my chest like a burning secret. I want to say your name the way no one ever has. I want you to look at me like you do when you think I'm not watching. I want to give you something more than regret. But I know what I am. I know what you are. And I know what they'd say. Still, I wait. Even now I wait. I sat on the bed and read it again. And again. And again. My hands were shaking, not from shame, but from something else. Anger, longing, truth. Because for a moment I believed him. He had written that before Sarah brought him back. Before the ring, before the lies. He had felt it too. I folded the page, put it in my robe pocket, and closed the closet gently like sealing something dangerous back inside. When they returned, I was in the kitchen again, calm, measured. Sarah was glowing from the cold. You should have come, Mom. It was beautiful. Adam locked eyes with me as he shook snow from his jacket. I handed them cocoa as if everything was normal, as if the world hadn't just flipped upside down. Later, when Sarah went to shower, I followed him out to the porch where he'd gone to smoke. I read it, I said, He didn't ask what. He just looked at me with something like guilt, but not quite. You kept it, I said, that letter. I meant every word, he replied. You proposed to her anyway. He looked away. I didn't know she'd say yes. She's my daughter, Adam. He met my eyes again, and you're the only person who's ever made me feel seen. I slapped him again, not gently, not in hesitation. This time I wanted him to feel it, but he didn't flinch. He just whispered again like a vow etched in fire. We started something, and it's not done yet. The envelope arrived on a Wednesday. Thick cream cardstock, elegant calligraphy, a gold wax seal pressed with the letter H for Hill, my last name. My daughter's last name. My daughter who was now planning a wedding with the man who once kissed me like I was the only truth in his world. I had made it 26 days without screaming. That letter cracked something. Sarah was humming when I walked into the kitchen, invitation already opened on the counter, the gold edge catching the morning light. Isn't it beautiful? She asked, beaming. I nodded. My hands were trembling as I picked it up. You are cordially invited to the wedding of Sarah Elaine Hill and Adam Royce Thorne. Saturday, October 3rd, Hilltop Gardens, Waverly Estate. I couldn't breathe. The world blurred as if the paper in my hands were a dream or a punishment. She was talking beside me, excited. Something about a dress fitting and garden arches and pale lavender tulips. She asked me if I still had those white table runners from my second wedding, the one to her stepfather. The one that failed, not because of passion, but because of boredom. I didn't respond. Adam walked in then, shirt clinging just a little too well to his chest hair still damp from the shower. He paused when he saw the invitation in my hand. I didn't look at him. I didn't have to. I could feel the shift in the air. Sarah noticed none of it. She threw her arms around his waist and kissed his cheek. Mom loves it, I can tell. He gave me a slow, unreadable look over her head. I wanted to throw the invitation into the sink and light it on fire. I wanted to scream at both of them. I wanted to shake her, tell her to look closer, that he wasn't who she thought he was. But the cruelest part, he wasn't the one who broke first. I was. Because somewhere in that storm of rage and heartbreak, a darker thought crept in. What if he did love her? What if I was just a phase? A lonely mistake? A weak woman grasping for meaning in a moment of heat? That night I drank. Too much. I sat in the backyard under the oak tree that used to be Sarah's fairy palace when she was a child. I stared up through the leaves, the wind cold on my skin. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just sat until Adam found me. He knelt beside my chair, careful, like I was a frightened animal. I didn't know she sent them out today, he said gently. I didn't answer. She wants you to be her maid of honor. I laughed hard and bitter. Is that your idea of a joke? He reached for my hand. I pulled it away. You don't get to touch me, I said. Not anymore. I'm marrying her, he said, voice tight. But I never stopped wanting you. My stomach twisted. Don't. It's the truth. No, I snapped. The truth is, you stood in this very yard and told me I mattered. You wrote things I believed. And now you're planning your vows with my daughter. That's not truth, Adam. That's manipulation. He looked wounded. So what do you want me to do? Leave, I said, before you destroy her. But he didn't flinch. He just stood up, walked to the sliding door, and whispered before going in. We already did. I don't believe in signs, not really. But that letter, that wasn't coincidence. It was a week after the invitations arrived. I'd decided to clean out the hall closet, the one with mismatched towels, Sarah's old Halloween costumes, and a tangle of shoeboxes filled with pictures I couldn't bear to throw out. I was reaching for a winter blanket when something slid from between two flattened board games and fluttered to the floor. An envelope. Unmarked. No address. Tucked inside a hardcover journal I didn't recognize. At first I thought it was mine. The handwriting looked vaguely familiar, loopy, and soft. But when I opened it, my heart dropped. It was Sarah's. The letter was dated 6 months ago, before Adam returned, before the proposal. Dear Adam, I don't know if this is love. I think it might be. I want it to be. But sometimes I feel like I'm trying too hard to mean something to you. Like I'm holding your attention hostage. You're kind, generous, but distant. I keep wondering if I imagined the way you look at me, or if you're just not ready to be looked at that way by anyone. Sometimes I wonder if you're still in love with someone else. Sometimes I wonder if it's her. My mom. My breath stopped. I read the sentence again and again. Sometimes I wonder if it's her, my mom. It didn't say much more, just a few scattered lines about how Sarah always felt like she was a placeholder in her own life. About how she knew I was more than a mother, that I used to be something softer, wilder before life bled the woman out of me. She loved him. But even then, before the ring, before the lie, she knew. I sat there on the floor, the letter clutched in my hand like it was a weapon or a lifeline. Maybe both. She had felt it. She had seen it. All this time I thought I was hiding something, burying it beneath polite silence and tightly buttoned blouses. But my daughter had seen it anyway. That night I stood outside their bedroom door. I heard them laughing inside, the muffled thump of feet, the creak of the bed, the sound of a woman letting go, and a man pretending. I didn't knock, I didn't scream, I just stood there listening, burning, breaking. Later I found Adam in the kitchen alone, shirtless, barefoot, drinking water like nothing in the world was burning down around us. I threw the letter onto the counter. He didn't touch it. She knew, I said. He nodded slowly. I figured she did. You should go. I will, he said. After the wedding. That stopped me. What? I'll marry her. Give her the life she thinks she wants. Then I'll leave. It'll be easier that way. You're disgusting. No, he said softly. I'm in love. With me, I asked, voice cracking. He nodded once. And I hated how much I wanted to believe him. There was a storm the first night we crossed the line. Not the night in the hallway. Not the night of the kiss. The real night. The night he entered my bedroom. It started with thunder low and distant, the kind that feels more like a warning than a sound. I remember watching the shadows crawl across the walls while lightning stitched the sky in silence. I hadn't intended to leave my door open, but it was, just slightly, a crack of space, a whisper of welcome. I heard his footsteps long before he reached the room. He didn't knock. He didn't speak. He just stood in the doorway watching me. I should have told him to leave. But instead I whispered, "Are you scared of storms?" He didn't answer. He crossed the room slowly, deliberately, like each step was a decision he'd already made 1,000 times in his mind. When he sat beside me on the edge of the bed, neither of us moved for a moment. Then with the gentlest motion, he reached for my hand. I let him. He traced circles into my palm the way you might trace the rim of a glass you don't plan to drink from. You smell like rosemary, he said, and rain. I said nothing. We were quiet together, so quiet, I could hear my heartbeat pounding in my ears. I think about you when I close my eyes, he murmured. You shouldn't. But I do. When he leaned in, I didn't resist. When he kissed me, I kissed him back. When his hands found my hips, I trembled not from fear, but from the shock of being wanted. Truly wanted. Not for what I could provide. Not for what I used to be. But for who I was right then in the half-light and thunder. The rest unfolded like a secret we'd already promised to keep. His body was warm, insistent, reverent. Mine was hesitant, hungry, afraid. But I gave in, and he stayed the night. We didn't speak much. But before the storm faded, he whispered, "You're not just her mother. You're mine too, in the way that matters." I didn't know what that meant. I still don't. But I remember what I said back then, don't break her heart just to hold mine. The memory of that night returned to me days later after reading Sarah's letter. After watching her and Adam embrace beneath my wedding arch in the backyard like they hadn't corrupted it. I sat alone in the bathtub, hot water creeping up to my collarbone, the lights off, just candlelight flickering across the tile. And I remembered everything. The way his lips tasted like red wine and grief. The way he whispered my name like it was a prayer. The way I felt for the first time in decades like I wasn't invisible. I hated myself for remembering it. I hated him more for letting it fade. But mostly, I hated the part of me that still wanted it to happen again. Because after that storm, we made a promise in the dark. No one could ever know. And now everything was breaking. The engagement party was Sarah's idea. A small gathering in our backyard under string lights and laughter, catered with wine and faux joy. She wanted something intimate. Ironic, considering everything about this arrangement had become grotesquely intimate. I stood under the pergola, where I once renewed vows with a man who now lived 3 states away. I smiled at guests I barely remembered. I poured wine for people who didn't know they were drinking inside a slow-moving betrayal. Sarah glowed. She wore a lilac dress that made her look like the little girl who used to beg for tea parties at sunset. But she wasn't a child anymore. She was a woman in love, or so she thought. Adam looked perfect, too perfect. Clean-cut, polite, attentive, holding her hand, kissing her temple, laughing at stories. If I hadn't known better, I might have believed it myself. But I did know better. I knew how he looked when he wanted someone. And that look hadn't faded, not for me. The band started playing something soft and slow. Sarah turned to me, tugged my hand. "Dance with him," she said. "You haven't danced in years, please." It was a joke, a sweet gesture, a cruel request. I laughed, waved her off. "You're the bride, you should dance." "No," she insisted. "You first, then I'll cut in." I don't know why I did it. Maybe because I wanted to see if I could withstand it. Maybe because a part of me still wanted to be chosen. So I stepped forward, took his hand, let him pull me onto the makeshift dance floor. We moved slowly, as if nothing had ever happened between us. As if we weren't standing on a landmine of secrets. As if her eyes weren't on us from just a few feet away. "You look beautiful tonight," he said under his breath. I stiffened. "Don't. Everyone's watching. I have to play my part." "You're good at that." He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. Then he leaned in too close and whispered, "Do you remember the storm?" I froze. He said it so softly only I could hear. His lips barely brushed the shell of my ear. My skin lit up like a siren. I stepped back, but he caught my wrist, not roughly, not publicly, just enough to keep me from running. "You remember," he said again. "I can feel it in the way you're trembling." And then just as the song ended, I saw Sarah, standing a few feet away, watching us. Her smile was still there, but her eyes had changed. Just for a second. Long enough. She didn't say anything, just walked toward us, arms open, laughing. "My turn," she said cheerfully. "Mom, don't fall in love with him." I laughed too, hollow, sharp, too late. She didn't catch it. But he did. And he didn't stop staring. As they danced, I walked away into the house, into the silence, into the growing sense that everything was about to collapse. Because now she'd seen it. She just didn't know what she saw. Not yet, but she would. The deed sat on the dining table between us like a final betrayal. It wasn't meant to be a ceremony, just paperwork. A transfer of property from mother to daughter. A gift, she called it. "You've done enough, Mom," she'd said with that practiced, eager smile. "This house should be mine now. It's where our story begins." Ours. She meant hers and Adam's, not mine. I had wanted to say no, I had wanted to scream, but instead I said, "Of course, sweetheart." Because by then, guilt had begun to rot me from the inside out. Every time she kissed him in front of me, I felt like I was watching a fire I started. And maybe this giving her the house was my penance. So I sat down, picked up the pen, signed my name across the dotted line. It was the same signature I had once written on her birth certificate, trembling with joy. Now I wrote it to give her everything I had left. Adam wasn't in the room when it happened. He said he had errands. I didn't ask. Sarah hugged me after tightly like a child. "This means so much," she whispered. "It's like you believe in us." I nodded, but I didn't believe in them. I believed in guilt, and in how it changes a person. Later that night, I sat alone in the master bedroom, the room that still smelled faintly of stormy nights and rosemary. My name was no longer on the deed. This house was no longer mine. But it wasn't just the bricks and walls I had given her. It was memory. It was pain. It was the room where I let Adam touch me, the hallway where we kissed, the tub where I remembered his voice, his promises. Every inch of this place held a version of me I wasn't proud of, and now it belonged to her. The cruel poetry of that nearly broke me. He found me there later, Adam, standing in the doorway like a shadow that wouldn't leave. "You gave it to her," he said. I didn't respond. "She doesn't deserve it. Neither do I." He crossed the room, slowly, like he always did. "You should have given it to me," he said softly. "You always said this house felt like you." I looked up at him, tired, raw. "I gave her the house, Adam, but I gave you everything else." He blinked. And for the first time he looked shaken. I stood, walked past him. My shoulder brushed his chest, and I didn't stop. I left him in that room alone. Because I knew now, no matter how many promises he whispered or how many nights he stole, Adam would always belong to no one. Not to Sarah. Not to me. Just to the hunger he never learned to name. And I had fed it. She stood in the kitchen, her arms crossed her face, calm, in that unnerving way, like the surface of a lake hiding something sharp beneath. "I know everything," Sarah said. It was morning. The air still smelled like coffee and burnt toast. The house was quiet except for the soft hum of the fridge. Adam had left early, gone to the city for tux fittings, he said. I didn't ask who else would be measuring him. I blinked. "What do you mean?" She tilted her head slightly, like she was weighing how far she'd push me. "I know about the letter," she said. My breath caught. She meant the one I found in the closet, the one she had written. Sometimes I wonder if it's her, my mom. I exhaled slowly, cautiously. "Sarah, don't lie to me," she cut in. "Not now." She walked to the counter, picked up her coffee, took a calm sip. Her hands didn't shake. Mine did. "I knew something was off," she said. "Before we got engaged. When we reconnected, he was intense. Like he was trying to prove something. I thought it was about me. But now I think it was about you. Sarah, I'm not stupid," she went on. "I saw how he looked at you. That night at the party on the dance floor, it was like I wasn't even there. I lowered myself slowly into the kitchen chair. I didn't speak, because I didn't know how much she knew, and how much she only guessed. She set her coffee down. I asked him once, a few weeks ago, point blank. I said, "Did you ever have feelings for her?" I swallowed. And what did he say? She smiled, tight, sad. He said yes. I blinked. I had braced for anger. Screaming, crying, blame. But instead she just sat down, across from me, like we were two women who had both been lied to. I was furious, she admitted, for about a week. Then I realized something worse. What? She looked me dead in the eyes. He's in love with you. Silence. I couldn't breathe. She nodded as if she'd said something casual. And you might be in love with him too. I looked away. That was when she leaned forward, voice low. But here's what you don't know, Mom. Here's what you never asked. My eyes returned to hers. She didn't blink. I'm pregnant. My heart stopped. She said it like a fact. No tremble, no emotion. I found out 2 days ago, she said. I was going to tell him next week. But then I saw how he looked at you again last night, and now I don't know what I'm doing. I covered my mouth with both hands. Tears came not from guilt anymore, but from something deeper. Loss. Undoable loss. She stood up slowly. I just needed you to know what I know. All of it. She turned toward the door, then paused. Whatever happened between you and him, it's over now. I didn't respond. Because in that moment I realized she was wrong. She didn't know everything. She knew about the letter. She knew about his feelings. She knew about her child. But she didn't know what I had done. Not really. She didn't know how far it had gone, or what I still carried in the quiet. And that was the cruelest thing of all. She thought this was a story of unspoken feelings. But it wasn't. It was a story of a mother who crossed a line she could never uncross. And a daughter who would never know how deep the betrayal truly went. The morning after Sarah's revelation, I went for a drive. No destination. Just roads that curved like questions I couldn't answer. The sky hung low with fog, the kind that makes you feel like the world is holding its breath. I ended up 2 towns over in front of a library I hadn't visited in years. I don't know why. Maybe I was searching for something still untouched by this mess. Maybe I just didn't want to go home. I sat in the car with the engine off, scrolling through my phone out of habit. That's when I saw an old message from Adam buried in my inbox. It was dated a few weeks before he moved into my house. The subject line was blank. The body just said, "Would it be wrong to want something that doesn't belong to me?" At the time, I thought it was about Sarah. I assumed their flirtation had started before I knew, that he had arrived with her heart already half won. But now, I opened my email search bar and typed his name. And that's when I found them. Dozens of messages. Drafts I never saw. Unsent letters never meant to reach me. He had written to me anonymously, from an old email tied to a school account. Notes about loss, about aging, about feeling invisible in rooms full of people. At first I thought they were spam, but the details, the language, they were unmistakably his. One message said, "She said I should talk to someone, that I have a pattern, that I chase women who mother me, that I confuse love with shelter." Another, "Sometimes I want to ruin things, just to feel like I can still change the shape of the world around me." I read for over an hour breathless, and somewhere in that hour the truth clicked into place. He hadn't just fallen for me. He'd been watching me long before Sarah ever introduced us. Studying me, wanting me, not as a woman, but as a role, as something symbolic, something nurturing, something he could both worship and destroy. A mother. Not his mother, but someone's mother. He hadn't loved me despite that. He had loved me because of it, and suddenly it all made sense. The way he called me Mom even after Sarah left, the quiet reverence, the restraint, the danger under the softness. I was never just Carol to him. I was a vessel, a fantasy, something he could consume in the dark and disown in the light. I felt sick, used, stupid. But worse than that, I felt complicit, because I had wanted it, because I had let it happen. I drove back in silence. When I walked into the house, he was already there, sitting on the stairs. He looked up, smiled gently. "You okay?" "No," I said. I handed him a printed copy of one of the emails. He read it, and to his credit, he didn't lie. He folded the paper and placed it on his lap. "I wrote them for you," he said simply, before I knew how to say those things out loud. "I was never yours," I whispered. He nodded. "But I wanted you to be, because I reminded you of her." He didn't answer. Didn't have to. His silence was confirmation enough. And now I said, voice barely audible, "You're marrying my daughter?" He stood slowly, stepped forward. "I wanted you before her. That doesn't make it better. I know. He stopped in front of me. I didn't come here to ruin you, Carol, he said, but I think I did anyway. And for once we agreed, because in the end, that's what he did. He didn't just ruin my house, he ruined the way I saw myself. And I let him. He left the key under the mat. Motel 7, Route 19, Room 214. He didn't text me to ask. He didn't beg. Just wrote the address on a sticky note and slid it into my recipe book between the pages where my mother's coffee cake used to live. A place he knew I'd find it. I don't remember deciding to go. I just remember driving. Headlights cutting through the darkness. The hum of the tires drowning out the voices in my head. Sarah's voice, my own, the echo of his whisper. We started something. And it's not done yet. The motel was exactly what you'd expect. Peeling paint, a vending machine that ate your quarters, cigarette burns on the railings. It smelled like old rain and denial. I stood outside room 214 for a long time before knocking. He opened the door as if he'd been standing just behind it, waiting. He didn't smile. Neither did I. Inside the room was dim. One bed, 2 lamps, a suitcase in the corner, a bottle of something brown on the nightstand, 2 glasses. He'd prepared for an answer, but not the one I carried. You came, he said softly. I shouldn't have. But you did. I stepped inside, closed the door behind me. The air felt too warm, or maybe it was me. He walked toward the table, poured 2 drinks, handed me one, like this was normal. Like we were just 2 adults on the edge of something brave and romantic, not twisted and cruel. I set the glass down. He watched me patient, expectant. Like he already believed he had won. I read everything I said. He didn't ask what. I knew he knew. I saw who you are, I continued, not who you pretended to be for her, not who you pretended to be for me. He looked at me steadily, and I think you want to be loved by a mother who won't leave. That made something flicker behind his eyes. You came here to analyze me, he asked. No, I said. I came here to end it. His jaw tightened. So this is the part where you walk away? I stepped closer, not afraid anymore. This is the part where I choose her. He blinked. You already gave her the house. What else do you have to give? I took a deep breath. Everything. He stepped back just slightly. You used us both, I said. You fed her love and gave me longing. You stitched your wounds into our lives and called it connection. But it wasn't love, Adam. It was hunger, and I'm done feeding it. He opened his mouth to speak. I raised a hand. No more. You'll marry her or you won't. That's up to you. But if you do, you'll do it knowing I will never speak of this again. Not to her, not to anyone. His face hardened. You're protecting her. I nodded. Not from you, from me. Silence filled the room like water rising in a glass. Then he said I would have left her for you. I know, I replied. That's why I'm leaving first. I turned, walked to the door, opened it, paused. I loved you, he said quietly. I know, I said, but I loved someone else too once, and it didn't save me either. Then I stepped outside. Into the night, into the cold, into the kind of silence that feels like forgiveness, sharp, necessary, and final. I didn't sleep that night. Not because of the motel or Adam or the memory of his hand against my skin. I didn't sleep because I knew what had to come next. The kind of clarity that arrives only after you've lost the right to it. At sunrise, I made coffee the way Sarah liked it, strong 1 sugar, no cream. The kitchen felt unfamiliar now, even though I had lived in it longer than she'd been alive. It had become hers. I'd given it to her. Like the deed. Like everything else. She came downstairs in a robe, her face puffy with sleep. She looked young again, like the girl who used to crawl into my bed during thunderstorms and ask if the world was ending. Hey, she said, yawning. You're up early? I handed her the coffee. We need to talk. Her eyes sharpened instantly. Not angry. Just bracing. I sat down at the table. So did she. I want to tell you something, I began, not because I think you'll understand, but because I need to say it out loud and you deserve the truth. My version of it. She said nothing. She didn't have to. I loved him, I whispered. Her lips parted, but no sound came out. Before you did, I said. Before the ring. Before you brought him home again. When you left for college and he stayed. It was brief. Shameful. And it should have ended there. But it didn't. Not in my head. Not in his. Her eyes filled with tears. Still she didn't speak. I didn't plan it, I said. But I didn't stop it either. I reached into the drawer, pulled out the folded letter, the one I had found, the one she wrote. I placed it on the table untouched. You knew, I said, even before I did. She wiped her eyes. Why are you telling me this now? Because you're pregnant, I said. And I don't want you to start your life with a man who doesn't know how to love someone without needing to ruin them first. Her jaw clenched. You think I should leave him? I think I said gently, you already know what you're going to do, and it's not my place to stop you. Not anymore. She stood trembling. I gave you the house, I continued. I gave you my silence, my guilt, my surrender. But this is the last thing I have to give. She looked at me like she didn't recognize me anymore. Maybe she didn't. Maybe I didn't either. She took the letter, left the room. I didn't follow. A week later, I received an envelope in the mail. No note, just a copy of the deed updated, notarized. My name was back on it. I stared at it for a long time. I didn't know what it meant. Was she punishing me? Forgiving me? Leaving? Staying? I still don't know. All I know is this. I gave her everything, even the deed to my heart. And in the end, she gave something back. Even if it was just distance. Even if it was silence. Even if it was the space to finally forgive myself. Because some stories don't end in reconciliation. They end in reckoning. And sometimes that's the most honest kind of love we have left to offer.